Welcome to Columbus News Channel. New operations have been launched at critical points on the Eastern Front. On the Donetsk front, the Russian military points were bombed. Stable progress has begun in the regions where record attacks against the Russian army were carried out. Russia is still fighting in the regions where it has suffered the greatest losses. Aims of the Russian soldiers are revealed. Russian and Chechen soldiers in the region try to prove themselves to Russian leader Putin. Russian military positions were hit by the Ukrainian armed forces with Nato artillery. Russia lost thousands of its soldiers even in a single region. A record number of Russian command centers were destroyed. Nearly 600 Russian soldiers were neutralized during the day. Russia's efforts to attack the border regions continue. Now all kinds of moves have become more critical. It is known that the Ukrainian army has recently carried out an operation on the Eastern Front. In these operations, many Russian soldiers and equipment are neutralized. This situation began to cause serious reductions in Russia's military resources. Moreover, each region on the front is of critical importance for the two armies. As it is known, the Eastern Front is located on the border with many Russian regions. Closer the Russian border is, the more counterattacks may increase. At the same time, dominance can be achieved in a larger area as it is deployed in the areas where progress is made. This provides a significant advantage in battle. It is also known that Donbass in the east has both political and military importance for the countries. We can say that Russia started the war for the sake of domination in this region. However, what the Russian army could not do for months, the Ukrainian army started to do in a few days. Ukrainian armed forces are advancing day by day with the operations they have started on this front, and are inflicting great losses on the Russian troops. In the past days, it was reported that the Ukrainian forces carried out a record number of attacks against the Donetsk front with various weapons, such as Vampire missile systems. With these attacks, many military losses were suffered on the Russian side. This time, it was reported that Ukrainian troops carried out new attacks against the Donetsk region. According to the statements, Russian military points in the region were hit with Nato artillery. With the use of these artillery, Russian military positions were also subjected to heavy artillery bombardment. It was even reported that 7 artillery shells of 155 mm caliber were fired against this Donetsk territory in just 15 minutes, causing serious damage. It was also stated that as a result of this attack, Russian military points were engulfed in flames. These bullets are being fired all over the region and Russian military positions are also being bombarded. This situation causes Russia to suffer serious losses. Moreover, it was announced that the Russian Federation suffered the greatest losses in the Bakhmut and Avdiivka fronts on this front. The biggest casualties are mostly in Bakhmut on this front. In line with the attacks launched by the Ukrainian army on this front in recent days, many additional reinforcements have been sent to the region. Large-scale attacks and intense clashes followed. It was stated that thousands of Russian soldiers were lost on this front with hundreds of artillery fire. Losing hundreds of soldiers day by day, Moscow may have to withdraw from the front at any time. Luhansk Oblast Military Administration Chairman Serhiy Haidai stated that Russia lost thousands of its soldiers in the operations carried out in Bakhmut and its surrounding regions. Also, the purpose of the Russian soldiers' moves in Bakhmut was revealed. According to Haidai, these soldiers are now carrying out persistent attacks in the region because it has symbolic meaning for the Kremlin rather than a strategic plan. Fact that the Russian army, which has suffered serious losses on this front, is still trying to attack in the region, also shows that these soldiers have another purpose. This aim is to prove themselves to Russian President Putin. Russian, Chechen, and mercenaries, who have suffered heavy losses in the region for days, continue their attack attempts to prove themselves to the Russian leader, despite the losses. But these ambitions bring their own demise. It also causes the loss of thousands of soldiers even in a single region. Haidai stated that he thinks that the Russian army's plans for this front continue, and that these soldiers want to reach the administrative borders of Donbass. Institute for War Studies, on the other hand, stated that the progress of the Russian forces in this front has started to slow down and may be starting a tactical pause. Any move on such critical fronts is of great importance for both sides. Moreover, the Ukrainian army continues its accurate moves on the fronts. This time, the Ukrainian Air Force hit 5 critical points where Russian troops and military equipment are concentrated. As a result of this move, the Russian army suffered significant losses. Ukrainian rocket and artillery units hit 4 important points and 9 command points of the Russian troops. This number is quite critical. Shooting close to 10 command points even during the day may cause the losses of the Russian army to reach an irreparable level. Because of these hit points, communication between soldiers is broken and many experienced Russian soldiers are rendered ineffective. This causes the operations on the Russian side to remain weak. Looking at the attacks at the points that have increased recently, it is seen that Ukraine has started to target the points where mostly Russian commanders or experienced soldiers are located. Reason for this is the further reduction of experienced Russian soldiers, who are already declining due to strategic mistakes. Moreover, it was reported that Russian commanders and officials, who were afraid of these attacks, started to flee from the fronts. In the past days, it was reported that due to the operations in the Luhansk region, the Russian authorities left the Svatov line and escaped the operations of the Ukrainian troops and advanced towards the center of the region. On the Russian side, this situation raises concerns. For these reasons, it is of much more critical importance that such moves are hit. Because the losses incurred as a result of these moves can also shape the operations to be carried out in the course of the war. In addition, as it can be seen, both sides are losing day by day in this war started by Russia. However, while Russia cannot compensate for these losses, Ukraine can compensate thanks to the support from the countries. This brings out the biggest difference between the two sides. It is also the country support they have. Thanks to the military support that has come to Ukraine since the beginning of the war, the Ukrainian armed forces are getting stronger day by day. General Staff again announced the latest losses of the Russian army in Ukraine. As a result of the precise actions of the Ukrainian troops, 7 armored combat vehicles, 5 tanks, 5 artillery systems, more than 10 vehicles and tankers of the Russian forces were destroyed. Moreover, nearly 600 Russian soldiers were neutralized during the day. Losing at least 300 to 400 soldiers every day, Russia is losing its ground operation power day by day. This makes it much more difficult to attack and achieve success on the fronts. Despite this, Russia's offensive efforts continue. Mutual attacks have increased, especially in border regions. Russian troops continue to bombard Sumy Oblast. Ukraine's Northern Operation Command said in a statement that Russian forces carried out 16 mortar attacks on Sumy Oblast in less than half an hour. No significant damage was reported from the area. Sumy Oblast was not the only region that Russia attacked with mortars. Kharkiv Oblast military administration head Ol Sinyhubov said in a statement he made in the morning that Russian forces attacked 12 places in Kharkiv Oblast with mortar and artillery fire in the last 24 hours. Sinyhubov shared the details of the damage in the areas. In these regions, infrastructures are mostly targeted. However, Ukraine's attacks on Russian military points in the border regions continue. Although mutual attacks are now tiring both armies, various military supports that will come to Ukraine will make the soldiers even stronger and more motivated. This will determine the fate of countries and armies in the course of the war. Now, it has become imperative for both sides to determine the steps to be taken and the decisions to be made in a much more strategic direction. Otherwise, one side's fault may become the other's advantage. War has now reached a completely different dimension, and what will happen is much more curious. We'll see what happens in the next few days. We have reached the end of another video. You can support us by liking the video. You can easily follow new videos by subscribing. I wish you all a war-free day. See you.